Have you ever used a Ouija board? They can be quite polarizing in discussions about how real they are, how real the experiences are from them. One camp believe it's nothing more than a toy that people put too much belief into and it's fake. People are moving the planchette themselves and just telling people they aren't because that's more scary or that gets more clicks and things like that. Whereas the other camp of people believe it is definitely a way of communicating with the spiritual realm and to communicate with spirits. And maybe you sit somewhere in the middle. Obviously, people can fake anything. And while I do believe that, it's something that I definitely won't be doing myself, because on the chance that any or all of it is totally, completely true and real, I would rather not put myself in that situation. So for now, the Ouija board will be nothing more than decor. We're going to look at some experiences from people over on TikTok and see what happened when they decided to use the Ouija board.
I've talked about how I lived in terror for years before my guide showed up, but I haven't explained how or why I was so afraid. I haven't really told a lot of people this story except for a few close friends because it is so freaking unbelievable that literally if I hadn't lived through it and somebody were telling me the story, I'm not even sure I believed them. So it happened when I was in my 20s. I had a roommate and we were renting a split level condo. We didn't really talk about this, but I would often see this woman. It was mostly I would see her out of the corner of my eye, not alive, and a yellow dress would go around the corner. I got the sense of her. I could tell what she looked like. I would most often see the woman when I was leaving. So I parked my car in the back of where the condos were, and my bedroom overlooked that part of the property. And so I could see the woman standing in my bedroom window pretty much every time I left. It would just be a random thing. Sometimes I'd look for her, sometimes I wouldn't, but it felt like she was always kind of looking out the window. But she wasn't intrusive. I thought it was creepy, but again, I didn't accept what was going on. I had no way of fixing it, and so like I had for the rest of my life, I just sort of tried to ignore it. So my roommate and I are driving away from the condo one morning, and she says, "Have you seen the lady that lives in our house, the lady in the yellow dress?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, yes, I see her all the time." So I felt seriously validated by the fact that I wasn't alone in seeing her, but at the same time, I didn't know what to do about it, so nothing actually happened. So time goes by, a couple years, I'm still in that place, and I am going to a Super Bowl party with a friend of mine. The friend's name is Trevin. She's the one that was throwing the party, and she had an apartment not far from mine. So we're in the party, and another friend of ours brings a new girlfriend that none of us have met. And she does a couple of shots, which seemed really weird at the time, but once she's relaxed and we've kind of hung out with her for a little bit, she starts telling us the craziest story about how she was new in town, didn't know anybody. This is before internet, so the only means by which she had to keep herself entertained was either watching TV or connecting through a telephone, like calling a friend. So her boyfriend was working, so he had their only car during the day, and she was sort of stuck at the house. So to combat this, she had gotten a kitten, which, great move, get a pet, and a Ouija board. And she was terrified because now she said the board had been telling her to do things that she wasn't comfortable with. She felt physically watched all the time. At first it was friendly, and she felt like it had gotten threatening. She also felt like something bad was going to happen if she didn't play with it 100% of her free time, which was getting to be obnoxious. She also noticed that not only was she feeling watched, but she had said that lately her cat would disappear, sometimes for hours, and she would look and look and look and look and finally find him, not only in a place that she had already looked, but usually in places that there's no way he could have gotten into. First we asked her, why don't you just throw it away, which seemed like the obvious question. And she said that she felt threatened, like something bad was going to happen if she threw it away. So we told her we would get rid of it for her. Makes sense, right? We don't believe in this. Nothing's going to happen. So we take her to her house. We pick up the board. We drop it off at my house, or I think it stayed in my car. I go back to the party. We go back to the party. Eventually, it ends up in my house, and I don't really do anything with it. I didn't really think about it after that. We figured we'd solved her problem. We took it off her hands. A few weeks later, Trevin asks me, "Hey, did you ever throw that Ouija board away?" And I was like, "No, I kind of forgot about it." And suggests, which I regret, that we play with it once, just to see. We don't believe in it. Nothing's going to happen. So we get it. We take it out of the box. We're upstairs in my bedroom, sitting on the bed, and we lay it out. There's a little funny shaped thing that comes with it, and called a planchette. We set the planchette on the board, put our fingers on it, and almost immediately it starts to move. It's talking to us. It confirms that it's the same person, entity, that our new friend had been talking to. But then it starts showing us the same thing. And I know how crazy this sounds. I remember it like a movie. We both saw exactly the same story. So the story that played out was about the lady in the yellow dress, that she had lived on the property hundreds of years before and had fallen in love with a boy from a different village. They would meet in the center of the village near a well. It was like 3-foot rock, like circle. But her father, who was one of the leaders of the village, had instituted a curfew because they had been warring with another local group. And so one night when she went out to meet her lover, they had both accidentally been shot and killed, and somehow in death had gotten separated. And because Trevin and I had chosen that time and contacted that entity in the space where the woman lived, we had created the environment by which they found each other again. We felt all of their feelings. There was a feeling of joy and excitement like I have never experienced before. Longing, love, accomplishment. We felt all of the years that they'd been separated, trying to find themselves, like find each other. It was overwhelming. And suddenly it was over with, and we were just sitting there looking at each other, tears just streaming down our faces. And we didn't say anything, but we felt like we'd closed the loop, like there was this sense of accomplishment. We did it. We put everything back in the box. We went downstairs, still not talking. Trevin gets in her car and drives away. I walk over to the dumpster and I throw the box in. We should have not thought that was all there was to it. Things were okay for a few days. I didn't see Trevin again for a couple of weeks, but within a few days I got home and every faucet in that condo was on full blast with the hottest water. I wish I could get that hot water out of it. I like hot showers. Boiling out of them. It happened more than once, so I called the complex. They had somebody come out and take a look. Could find nothing wrong with the plumbing. The lights would turn on and on, but not just on and off. They would flicker, and it felt like SOS. Like it felt like it was trying to say something. Had an electrician in. They could find nothing wrong with the electrical. I wasn't sleeping good. I had a newborn at the time, so I don't know if there were other factors. I tried to put it out of my mind until I saw Trevin again. She was like an entirely different person. Weeks go by before I see Trevin again, and I go to her house, and when she answers the door, she does not look good. She's lost weight. She's super pale. She has dark rings under her eyes. And I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I got my period, but it is way more blood than it should be. And I've been to the emergency room. They can't figure out what's going on. They've switched up my birth control because they think maybe it's my birth control pills. And so we talk about that for a little bit, and I'm assuming it's just something is physically wrong with her. And then she says, have you had weird things happening at your house since I was over there? And I was like, yeah. And I tell her about what happened with the water and the lights. And she's like, I've started sleepwalking. They had a big floor stand mirror in their bedroom. Her boyfriend was Gil. His name was Gilbert. And she said, Gil has woken up at night with me sitting on his side of the bed, just staring at the mirror. And I feel like I'm being watched through the mirror. I actually covered it with a blanket because I just don't feel good. I don't feel right. I don't feel alone. And she starts crying, like terrified tears. And I'm like, I don't even know what to say. So that's when I told her about not feeling alone in the house. I lived, I was alone, just me and the baby. So it's not like I would know if I was sleepwalking. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep because he was very young. But so she's like, I was talking to some friends and they mentioned that you're supposed to say goodbye when you're using one of those. And if you don't say goodbye, whoever you're talking to doesn't actually leave. And I'm like, well, we threw the Ouija board away. And she's like, well, what if we just go buy another one? Let's go buy another one. So that's what we did. We went and bought a Ouija board, completely different. So crazy that Mattel just sells these as a toy. And we went back to my apartment and sat on my bed and recreated how we started. This time we got exactly the same. It felt like exactly the same entity that we were talking to the first time. Except this time it wasn't friendly and it wasn't nice. We tried to act nonchalant and pretend like we weren't as scared as we were. It knew exactly how scared we were. We tried to make small talk with it and got monosyllabic responses. Yes, no. Some questions weren't even answered. And when we tried to say goodbye, it would fight us. Like, I remember trying to physically move it over. It pulled so hard against me that it flew off the board and dented the wall next to the bed. Trevin's crying. I'm freaking out. And I'm like, screw it. Let's just throw it away. I don't know what this. We were so wrong. We should not have done this. And I take it downstairs and throw it in the dumpster. I didn't put it back in the box. I threw the box and the planchette and the board away separately. I just threw it, grabbed it all up in my hands, took it downstairs, threw it in the dumpster. By the time I get back, Trevin's composed herself a little bit and said, maybe that's it. Maybe we did it. We said goodbye. Maybe it doesn't have to agree with us. Maybe it will actually leave us alone now. I don't think either of us believed that, but we were so scared, and she just went home. Next day and came home, and the Ouija board was sitting on my bed. Again, I live alone. Trevin didn't have a key to my apartment. Nobody had a key to my apartment. I tried to throw that dang thing away over and over again, and it would just show back up on the bed or under the bed, always in my bedroom. It got worse in the house. The lights were just a precursor to the shit that was going to hit the fan after that. I talked about how you can sense other things around you, that sixth sense, when you're in the dark and you're getting near to something or someone's standing next to you and you can feel them even though you can't see them. When I would walk into that apartment, it felt like I was walking into a crowd of people. I felt like I needed to make myself small because it was so full. And it didn't matter where I went in that apartment. You could hear screaming 24 hours a day. Not just a scream, screaming like a horde of people screaming in agony. I could still sense her in the house, but she had gotten really small, like she was being shoved away or shoved out. And I didn't feel like she could help us. I understood then that the story that we were told about reuniting her with her lover was a complete load of crap. It was drawing us in. We took it hook, line, and sinker. The attacks that were happening, I would wake up with scratches on my back, like places I can't reach. My I had a TV that was sitting on a stand, not the flat screens. This is old-timey TVs, the big ones. It literally flew off that and crashed onto the floor. I had one of those wind-up swings for babies. I couldn't use it anymore because I had put my son in the swing, went into the kitchen to fix dinner, and came back out, and the swing was moving so violently that it was getting hot, the top where the motor is. I would set something down on the counter and turn to get it again, and it was just gone. I would find it later. Some stuff just disappeared permanently. But I remember finding like a can of corn up in my closet, way in the back of my closet. Just the weirdest stuff. But mostly it was the feeling of not being alone and feeling threatened. Trevin came over one time, and both of us saw a being that was taller than our ceiling. I don't know how it fit in the room. It had to have been 12 feet tall, yet somehow still fit in the room. It picked Trevin up by the neck and held her off the ground until she passed out. This wasn't something we were capable of fixing or even having an impact on, and we were terrified. So we called the Catholic Church because, that's what people do in horror movies, right? They call the Catholic Church. Whoever answered the phone must have thought that I was a prank caller because they hung up on me. Trevin ended up in the hospital because she was losing so much blood and they didn't know why. And it got to the point that unless we were together, we couldn't even sleep. It was so aggressive. We literally didn't know who to go to for help, which is the main reason I don't charge people for this type of work, because it was impossible without the internet to find someone to help me. So it actually got worse. After the Catholic Church hung up on us, Trevin heard somewhere that we didn't know what to do, so we were going to try to fix it ourselves, right? That you should confront the entity and make it leave through sheer force of will and invoking the name of God. Well, I was raised Adventist. Trevin was Jewish, but I had left that religion because of my childhood and the oppression that I have and the literal trauma I have from being raised that way. But so we did it. As soon as we got started, there were like 9 little creepy things ran out from the kitchen. I remember they were about 2.5 feet tall. They had legs and arms, but they were very twisted and they moved in a weird way. It wasn't just running. But we had been told to open the front door, and to sort of usher everything out. So we did that. The screaming intensified to the point where I remember yelling, like I felt like our neighbors must have thought we were batshit crazy, yelling to be heard over whatever noise it was I was hearing. I don't know if it was actual noise, but I remember it being very loud in that room. I had a cat. On the landing of the stairs, you go up one flight, there was a landing, and then back up the other flight to the upstairs. There were floor-to-ceiling mirrors on the top of that landing, and my cat would sit there for hours just watching that top landing. He wouldn't go upstairs after we played with the board. It was whatever was going on upstairs. It was in the whole house, but there were so many signs, and I've forgotten a lot of them. So we do this clearing, and for a couple of days, it seems like things might be better. But that giant tall thing before it left the house laughed at us in a really like, oh, you silly girls kind of a way. Like, what do you think you're doing? I didn't for a moment feel like it wasn't going to come back. My cat kept watching the upstairs. Day 1, nothing really happened, except I still didn't feel alone in the house. The screaming wasn't as bad, but I still felt like there were tons of people around me. I'm sitting downstairs. My bedroom is right above the living area, and I was reading a book, and all of a sudden I heard what sounded like somebody trashing that room, knocking over a bookcase, knocking over my dresser, glass breaking. And I'm thinking, oh my God, somebody's broken in. There was a balcony up off my bedroom. And so I thought maybe somebody had broken in up there. I grabbed a knife and I walked up the stairs. I don't know what I thought I was going to do. I have a newborn at home. I opened the door to my bedroom and there is nothing misplaced at all in that room. Nothing. It's exactly the way I left it. Except now there's this weird smoke or mist hanging over the bed. It didn't go away for 3 or 4 days. It just stayed there. I was so exhausted by this point. I wasn't, the screaming at night, I couldn't sleep. I was terrified for Trevin and what was going on. I'd had other things happen, like I was driving on a road on a hill and my steering wheel kept feeling like something was pulling it so that it would go off the edge of the road because there was no guardrail there. I literally felt like I was in danger for my life. Yes, I realize how utterly insane all of this sounds, but this is exactly what happened. So we realized pretty quickly that whatever we did in that house didn't do a dang thing. If anything, it made it worse. I came home one day and the front door was open. I never used the front door. I always went in through the back because that's where I parked. There was no off-street parking or street parking in front of it. It was like a big drop-off, so you had to walk all the way down to the corner, go down to the street, go onto the sidewalk. It was a hassle. I never, ever parked out front. Never used the front door. It was always dead-bolted. Came home and the door was wide open. Never saw my pet again. A cat that I'd had for 12 years that I'd literally flown with me when I moved because he was so spoiled. Gone. Just gone. Never saw him again. Looked everywhere for him. Positive something got him. I didn't let him out. We made very sure that he never went outside. I'm sure there are things that I'm leaving out, but at some point, Trevin's boyfriend found a pastor who used to work with people who had been in cults. This wasn't long after the satanic panic of the 80s. So we still had all of those people that felt like evil was just around the corner and the option to be possessed was in every shadow. I mean, it was bonkers, and so much of it was so fake. This was not fake. Trevin and I had gotten to the point where we were rarely separated. The serious attacks that would try to kill us, like trying to pull my car off to the side of the cliff, happened more when we weren't together. And if we were in the same building, we were able to sleep. Other than that, we were not able to sleep. There are parts of the story I'm completely leaving out that are just not, they're too much even for me. Remember, we've had nobody to help us. We've called the Catholic Church. They hung up on us. We've tried doing a clearing ourselves, and it went badly. It just backfired and things got worse. So Trevin lets me know that this man is going to be at her house at a certain day and time. So I go down there with the baby. And I remember sitting down at her table, talking to this man and feeling like I wasn't feeling well. Like, you know, when you have a scratchy throat and it's kind of like talking doesn't feel good? It felt like that, but I hadn't been sick. And telling this man my story about what had happened. And him just looking at me, really weird. And after a few minutes, he said, hang on a second. I'm sorry to interrupt you. What languages do you speak? And I'm like, just English, a little bit of Spanish. He said, you've not been speaking English this entire conversation, and I don't know what language you're speaking, but it wasn't English. So he decided at that point, he had heard enough from just the bare bones of the situation. He asked to come and see the house. I would never have imagined what happened after that. So we get to my house and we go in through the back door. This is going to sound weird, but I don't know if you've ever washed a really greasy pan, like fried chicken pan. The water gets all grungy and gross, but if you put like a drop of dish soap in the water at the top, it just kind of whoosh, all that oil goes off to the sides. That's sort of what it felt like in my house when that man walked in. Every screaming being that had been in there for a couple of weeks at this point just moved the hell out of his way, off to the edges. It was like he bulldozed a path through all of the chaos. I didn't follow him. I didn't go upstairs. He walked through the kitchen slowly. Everything got out of this man's way. He walked into the living room, and then he stopped at the foot of the stairs, and he looked up the landing into the mirror like my cat had done before he got let loose. He went up the stairs. Trevin and I stayed in the kitchen, not talking. And he came back downstairs and said, "Are you planning on living here for much longer?" I said, I don't really have anywhere else to go. This is kind of my home. And he said, "I don't know what you've done here, but you've opened a doorway that I don't know if it can ever be shut. I would suggest you leave. There's nothing I can do, and I don't know anybody who can help you." At this point, I was terrified that somebody was going to get hurt. I wasn't sleeping. Like I said, I had a newborn. I just couldn't. I was done. So that night, I packed what I could fit in my car, and I literally left with what I could carry. Clothes, a few personal things. I didn't tell anybody where I was going. I never saw Trevin again. Don't know what happened to her. And moved as far away as I could afford to move. The fact that there was nobody to call, there was nobody who could help me, nobody who believed me, I think that was almost more terrifying than everything that was going on. And that followed me for years. So many years after that, I couldn't look myself in the mirror. I couldn't look at my own eyes because I didn't feel like it was me that was looking back at me. Every night for years, it didn't matter where I lived, it didn't matter what house it was. I lived in multiple different states. The man with the black cat would walk through the back wall of my house at 8:45, walk all the way through the house and out the front of the house, through the walls. My kids saw him, and I was terrified. I knew he was there so that I would kill myself. It almost happened once. I lived in terror of this stuff for years before my accident, when my guide showed up and said, "Do you know what you are? And are you tired of being afraid?" So this wasn't just I saw dead people in my room when I was a kid and I was traumatized. This was years of traumatic abuse from things that only I could see. When people call me with outrageous stories that always begin with, "You're going to think I'm totally nuts," but I'm not going to think you're totally nuts. I'm going to ask some questions, and we're going to rule out the things that might be obvious, and then we're going to figure out how to fix it. And it is so easy to fix. Oh my God. If I had known then what I know now, it would never have escalated to the point that it did. It would have been over with within a day. Most of these things can be fixed within literal minutes. It's not very often that I even have to go back and make a second pass. So the fact that my guides took the thorough time that they did in that 18 months after my accident to help me understand that they weren't bad, they weren't evil, giving me feedback, real-time feedback every day on the things that they were telling me that I could verify and understand that they were actually the good guys and that they were on my side. I will be forever grateful, and I understand what a unique learning situation that was, and I'm so grateful for it. I've seen people on the internet that charge $3,000 to do this type of clearing. Please don't pay money to those folks, please. Anyone who is willing to take advantage of someone who was in the state of mind that I was in at the time that this happened to me is so immoral. So immoral. You don't take advantage of people when they're in that state. You just help them. So be aware. Know that this stuff is fixable, imminently fixable. And you don't have to live in fear. Nobody does. It's easy to fix. It happens, but the more you know, right? For those of you that listen to all 4 parts of it, thank you for listening, because it's a scary thing to put yourself out there on a subject like this, especially when you're a normal human being who has a professional job and wants to be taken seriously. I think a lot of people who know me would have a very difficult time trying to correlate what I experienced with the person that they know me to be, which is why I put in everything that I write that I am extremely skeptical. I'm always skeptical. We always have to look for the logical explanations for things. But sometimes Occam's razor is the only answer. And that's okay. And we've got to just stop making people feel bad for it.
I don't believe the Ouija board is going anywhere anytime soon. It's been around since, I believe, the early 1900s, and I don't see it going out of fashion anytime soon. People use them for ghost hunting and also just for party games, something fun and a little scary to be playing with, as they are considered a toy.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
This is the experience I had, my first and last experience with a Ouija board. This was enough for me to decide, not for me. So I was living in an apartment with my boyfriend at the time, 2 other roommates. One of the roommates got a hold of a Ouija board, and the 4 of us decided we were going to sit around and play with the Ouija board at night to make it even more spooky. We turned off all the lights in the apartment. The apartment was dead silent other than us speaking with the Ouija board. And first of all, the fact that the Ouija board actually worked was enough for me to be like, whoa, that's crazy evidence. So in the corner of the living room, we had a black lamp, and it was like a metal lamp. And as we're asking questions, we hear a sound really loud enough for all 4 of us simultaneously to get up and rush out onto the balcony of the apartment because we were so scared. The lamp wasn't anywhere near us. The 4 of us were at the table. None of us could have made that noise. And there was nothing else around the lamp for like something to fall and hit it. The lamp was stationary on its own by itself. So the 4 of us were standing out on that balcony for what felt like 15 minutes, too afraid to go inside. We ended up packing up the Ouija board, putting it away. The roommates were done with it. But shortly after, I personally saw a shadow figure twice standing outside of the roommate's room in the hallway. Very tall, big shadow figure. Looked like it was wearing one of those hats. I'm going to put a picture of the type of hat that it looked like it was wearing, but it was just darker than black. Now, this was back when I still considered myself Christian. So as soon as I saw this type of stuff, I would pray and I would rebuke. And eventually it would just dissipate. I would go on with my life. Well, one morning I woke up and one of the roommates was sleeping on the floor in our room next to our bed with me and my boyfriend. He then asks if it's okay if he gets too spooked in his room, if he could come into our room. And he starts to explain how he's been having nightmares of things pulling at him and trying to get him. And then he shows me this bruise on his foot that looks like someone was pulling at him. And he felt more secure and safer in our room. So I said, that's totally fine. Stay as long as you want. We moved out shortly after. And when we moved out, the place that we stayed in, all the activity stopped. Until we moved into a condo, then activity picked up in that condo. I have a few stories about that condo. I don't know if the 2 are related, though. I don't think they are. I always don't think I have that many stories, and then when I stop to think about how many stories I do have, I could make quite a few videos.
Okay, gather around because the story might make you think twice about ever messing with the supernatural. I promise you guys my paranormal experiences, and I already skipped a day, so I already broke a promise, so I'm going to remake this promise doing it now. I'm going to stop cleaning Hence why I look a mess. And I'm going to tell you the story so I can fulfill my promise, okay? I don't know how I feel about my glasses on right now, so let's get into it. Okay, so moving past the dolls, this was my first experience with a Ouija board. So when I was about 10 years old, my mom has always told me never to fuck with the Ouija board, okay? And she would explain to me, like, it opens the doors to presence we don't really need. And as, like, a child, you know, you don't really understand what that means, you know? Honestly, growing up, I was scared of my mom. Not because she was, like, abusive or anything, but my mom's just a hardcore bitch, and she don't fuck around. Every time I fucked around, I found out, you know? So, yeah, we don't play with mama, but we love her to death. She's my best friend. Besides the point, okay? When I was about 10 years old, I was at a sleepover with one of my friends. We're gonna call her Ruby, okay? And during the sleepover, it was me, her, and then 5 other girls, and we stayed in the RV that was behind her house. And her parents, of course, stayed in the house. We were having a blast, okay? We were eating pizza, we were playing games, we were laughing, living our best 10-year-old life, okay? We're having a great time, and then pause. One of the other girls pulls a Ouija board out of her bag. When she pulled out the Ouija board, everybody else was hype as fuck. Not me. No, ma'am. My gut was already screaming, don't do it. This is a bad idea. Bad idea. Bad idea. I held true and made my mama proud, okay? I was like, I'm not touching that. And of course, I got called a chicken, like, you're such a chicken, like, you're so scared. First of all, bitch, I'm not the one who's got issues. Just kidding, I ain't gonna do. Of course, they start asking the board, like, is anyone there? Hello, are you here? Do you want to speak with us? Hello. For a few minutes, there was no answer. But suddenly, the planchette moves to yes. Me, my heart dropped, okay? And all these girls are like, stop it, Ruby, stop moving it. And Ruby's like, I'm not moving it. And all the girls are like, okay, someone's moving it. But everyone's like, I'm not moving it, I'm not moving it, I'm not moving it, I'm not moving it. And here I am. Ruby then asked, what is your name? And the silence was so loud. But then Ruby was feeling, this girl was feeling brave, okay? She starts taunting this spirit. Oh, are you scared? Just tell us your name, you coward. And that is where the darkness started, bitch. The air in the RV got so thick. Then, okay, I got chills already. The planchette starts moving frantically, okay? And I'm talking like figure 8 frantically. Literally figure 8ing, bitch. I mean like this, non-stop, okay? I have, look, can you see it? I got fucking chills, bro. I don't like it. Kind of don't want to say out loud what it spelled, so I'm gonna write it down. Or maybe that's worse. I don't know. I'm gonna use sign language. And I'm gonna do it y'all's way. Did you catch that? Ruby laughed at this name and said, what kind of name is that? And I felt an instant chill run down my spine. The atmosphere just shifted, and then literally the lights just turn off. Of course, we all start fucking screaming. Like, what else are you gonna fucking do in a situation like that? I want to scream right now. Oh my god. I mean, the lights were out for probably 45 seconds until they just turned back on. And it wasn't like somebody just like flipped the power. I mean, those things flickered and then turned the fuck off. When I looked at Ruby, her eyes were rolled in the back of her head and she was completely unresponsive. You know, me and the other girls, like, we're shaking her and we're like, Ruby, 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 trying to get her to snap back into whatever fucking realm she's in. And right after that, she just fell backwards and it looked like she was sleeping. And me and the other girls are just like, and we're sitting here thinking like this shit's a prank, you know? I know something you don't. I know something you will never. Shut up. The tension was just so unbearable. Like, all the girls were like, okay, yeah, we're going to sleep. Me, I barely slept, okay? I knew something was not right, okay? I slept for maybe an hour. The next morning, I felt off. I was the first one to get up. I'm looking around, and Ruby nowhere to be found. So I woke everyone up and I'm like, yo, dude, do you know where Ruby went? They're like, no. What the fuck? Okay, so maybe, you know, she went inside. Who knows? So we all are like freaking out, kind of like, where is she after what just happened last night? The fuck? And we go into her house. Oh my God, bro. Chills. We go into her house and we're asking her mom, like, hey, do you know where Ruby is? And her mom's face went blank. Like, what do you mean, do I know where Ruby is? We're like, she didn't come inside, right? And her mom's like, no. So we all take off outside and we're screaming like, Ruby, Ruby, where are you? Where are you, bitch? They lived on a lot of land. And behind the RV, we start walking and there this bitch is. She's laying down in the grass, face down. Her mom goes to grab her and she's like kind of shaking her like, Ruby, wake up, because she's breathing. Ruby starts screaming to the top of her fucking lungs. Okay? That scream is something I will never get out of my head. It's, yeah, no. So after she screamed, Daddy hears it. Ew, that was so southern. What the fuck? Her dad hears her scream. And he comes running out. He's like, are you okay? Are you okay? And she's not saying anything. Okay, so her mom, scared as fuck, as she should be, like the rest of us, okay, she goes inside and she calls her parents to come pick us up. Boom. And keep in mind, this was a time, like, I didn't have a cell phone. I don't think any of us held a cell phone at 10. I don't know. The times are changing. It's weird. I personally did not have a cell phone. So when I was keeping up with friends, it was using the house phone to contact them, okay? Like, yeah, we had internet, but Facebook wasn't a thing. We didn't have any way to, like, contact her, like, hey, are you okay? Like, it was just, nobody heard from her and nobody called her. The scariest part of this... It gets worse, unfortunately. She didn't return back to school the rest of the year, okay? We're probably halfway through the year. Bro, I cannot deny the fucking chills. The next year, Ruby comes back to school. But it's not fucking Ruby, bitch. I barely recognized her, and I haven't spoken to her in, what, 6-7 months, right? Her eyes... just looked off. They were very hollow. Her skin was pale as shit. No, I'm not talking about Edward. Sorry. There was something about her that just made me feel very unsettled. Like it's so hard to describe that feeling. It was like an unsettling darkness. That's the best way I can describe it. Like I didn't feel right, you know, and she didn't look right. But the creepiest part of all of this, I have tried to search for this girl, and you know me, bitch. You give me a name, background, where you live, your phone number, all of your email addresses, who you're related to, bitch, I will find everything. Okay? I found nothing on her. Literally nothing. It's literally like she vanished. I can't find her. No Facebook, no Instagram, no Google, no True People Search, no arrest. Like, it's like she never fucking existed. I'm going to say, without a doubt in my mind, I watched that bitch get possessed, okay? And, like, what you see on TV, bitch, what you see on TV shows, movies, like, it's very, I don't know, I think something's telling me not to talk about this anymore. Heed my warning, don't fuck with the Ouija board, and I know for some people they say, oh, it doesn't work. I don't know what to tell you, okay, but no. And if you know anything about the person that she was speaking with through the Ouija board, you know now, because as a kid, I didn't know what the fuck that was, who the fuck that was, what it meant. Now that I know that, just don't do it. Don't do it. Just don't do it. What if you open a door to something that never wanted to be found? I just think some spirits are better left undisturbed. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Now, you already know I love haunted shit, but I have gotten chills telling this whole entire story. My heat is on in this house, and I'm gonna stop talking about it, and I'm gonna get off. Love y'all, bye.
Show me the creepiest, most clear image of a spirit.
About 8 years ago, me and one of my best friends decided to start playing with a Ouija board, and little did we know it would become a weekly occurrence for probably years. So the two pictures I'm about to show you happened in the same apartment. This is where most of the really scary stuff happened. It wasn't scary in the beginning. It's a really long story. I have a whole playlist on YouTube of all these Ouija board videos. But we're just going to get to the point. So this happened during a live stream. I was streaming on Twitch in front of probably 100 people, and I heard a loud bang in my kitchen. It sounded like somebody hit their hand on my counter as loud as they could. I went and checked everything. Nothing moved. Nothing was wrong. And then somebody sent me this. This is captured right when the bang happened. There is a face in my kitchen. Had this like breakfast nook that looked through the living room into the kitchen, and that's exactly where it was standing. This next one again is in the same apartment, but in my living room, my blinds were moving in such a strange way. It's like a couple of them were clapping together, and we would ask the spirit to stop and start, and she would. We thought we were talking to a certain spirit. Again, it's a really long story, but anyways. This was what somebody captured because I was filming the blinds moving. Somebody took a screenshot and captured this face in the corner. I believe that's T, but I'm not sure. I've had paranormal stuff happen to me almost my entire life. My mom's house when I was in high school was fairly haunted. That's why we started doing the board. And then once we buried the board, everything just completely stopped. We called a psychic, medium, whatever, and they told us exactly how to dispose of the board. We did exactly what they said, and I swear it's like everything just came to a halt. It was insane.
Let's dive into some more interesting and scary stories that I have found on TikTok this week.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I used to live in a house that was a portal for spirits. This was when I was in 5th grade, and we found this out because we had a medium come out to our house. We had a lot of things happening, like our 2 bulldogs at the time would just run and chase things in the air, our grand piano would play by itself, and we would have things like doors closing by itself. Me and my dad's side of the family have like a 5th sense. We can sense things all in different ways, and so this didn't freak me out too much because it's not like things were bothering me. It wasn't until one night when I was sleeping, I woke up in the middle of the night and I noticed my bedroom door was cracked open, which I always kept my bedroom door closed at night. So I kind of figured that maybe my dad was just checking on me while I was sleeping. When I noticed the little crack of the door being open, I saw a male figure like peering into the bedroom. And I was kind of like dazed because I had just randomly woken up and I thought it was my dad. So I closed my eyes and I opened them back up, and the male figure was still there peering into my bedroom. So at this point I was like, Dad, I'm fine, sleeping, whatever. So I closed my eyes, go back to bed. Then I opened my eyes and the figure is still there. At this point, I think I'm like tripping, so I get up to investigate the situation. I was in a Jack and Jill bedroom with my sister, and her bathroom door was kept open, and I looked into her bedroom. She was sound asleep. So I open my bedroom door, I get into the hallway, look up and down, and there's nothing there. It's just pitch black, which the hallway on the left side of my bedroom was pretty creepy at night. I felt something was off there. I didn't go in there. So I head right down to my dad's bedroom. Walked into his bedroom and he was like fast asleep, like snoring, in that deep sleep. And my stepmom at the time was fast asleep too. So I freak out and I run back to my bedroom and I close the door and I put the covers over my head. I slowly start to take the covers off and the male figure is right in my face looking at me like this. I was so scared that I got into like the biggest little like fetal position under my blanket, and I just slept like that the rest of the night. After this incident, I didn't see that male figure again. So fast forward to many years later, I'm in college. I was living in my sorority house at the time, so I had like 15 other girl roommates. We were out drinking like a typical night, and I left to go back home to sleep, and I ended up passing out on the couch in my living room. I woke up and I felt someone next to me, and a guy was rubbing my leg. I was so confused, and I like look over and I see this male. He's real. He's like 30 years old, definitely not a college student, looks really rough, and I noticed that the front door was open. Living in a house with that many girls and us coming in and out, maybe the door was left unlocked. I'm not really sure how he got in the house, but he was not supposed to be there and he was touching me. I started to get in a little panic, but I try to keep calm on the outside so I can try and get him out of my house. We had a few bedrooms in the basement, and that's where I was living. And I kind of like was like, oh yeah, come with me to my bedroom. When we walked past the front door, I don't know how I mustered up all this strength, but I literally physically shoved him all the way out of my house, locked the front door. I ran down to my basement. I closed my bedroom door, locked it, and I went under my covers. I think I was maybe like one of the only girls home that night. And I go and lift up my covers, and I see the male figure that I saw when I was a child just standing in the corner of my bedroom. I knew this was the same figure because it was the same height and it was the same slenderness. Like, I can't tell any facial details or anything like that, but I realized that it was the same figure that I had saw when I was like in 5th grade. Until that moment, I realized that this figure that I had seen when I was younger was actually a guardian angel. And to this day, I think it's my grandpa on my dad's side. I didn't know him. I think he met me when I was a baby, but he had passed away because he was an alcoholic and had like liver failure, I think. And to me, it just feels like that this is him. And I think that was his way of showing me that he is protecting me and protecting me throughout my life, even though he wasn't there for me in the physical world. And when I was younger, I think maybe he was just checking on me. Maybe he was like playing hide and go seek with me. I'm not really sure, but he knew that I was so freaked out from that situation that he did not make himself known anymore until that moment when I was older. And since that incident when I was in college, I have not seen him again. So I'm not sure if he fulfilled what he was looking for or if he is still guiding me. I know that I have angels around me all the time, and I really appreciate his guidance and love on the other side. Let me know if you guys have had any instances with your guardian angels.
Sorry for the wait. Here's a really scary one for you guys for waiting for me. So my aunt lived in Toronto and we lived in Mississauga, right? My aunt has been dealing with a lot since she gave birth to her son at the time, and so my mom said, hey, why don't you come to our house and stay with us for a few days just to get your mind off of things. So she came over, and the whole time she had to stay in my room. Her and her son stayed in my room the whole time for a few days, but she just stayed there. She didn't talk to anybody, she just was quiet. My mom was getting worried, so she called her brother, and she's like, why don't you come and like take her to your house since it's closer to her house and where her husband is, so you guys can take care of her and see how she is there. Now this is key information that you have to remember what I'm going to tell you right now. My sister goes to bed at like maybe 8 p.m. and my uncle ends up coming over at 9 p.m. Okay? My sister falls asleep at 8 p.m. and she doesn't know my uncle came over because she's asleep, so my uncle comes over at 9 p.m., okay? We're telling him my aunt's being a little weird and stuff, and she just maybe wants to stay over near her house or something, or a different environment, so she ends up going home with my uncle that night. That same night, me and my mom started talking about how weird things have been since she came over, just the vibe, the energy, and how weird she's been acting. And so my mom ends up calling like a witch doctor from back home in Pakistan. She calls him and she tells him a little information about her, but what he told us kind of scared us. He said that someone had done black magic to my aunt back home in Pakistan, to my aunt, and that's why things have gotten really bad for her around that time. Someone was jealous of my aunt and her husband's marriage, and she did something. So my mom and me are pretty spooked, and we're like, okay, let's just call it a night, let's just go to bed. Mind you, I slept in my sister's room on a mattress on the floor. I didn't sleep in my room that night. The next day, my sister wakes up in the morning, and she brushes her teeth and everything, and then she checks my room and sees my aunt sitting on my bed looking at her like this. My sister's like, okay, and she closes the door. Didn't think much of it, and she went downstairs and she went on the computer. I wake up maybe an hour or two later, and I run downstairs and I tell her what happened like last night. Like, oh my god, someone did black magic to our aunt, like this and that, and you know, and she's like, well, where is she? I'm like, she went home last night. My sister's like, what are you talking about? I just saw her upstairs on your bed looking at me. And her face, like, blood dropped down from her face and everything. And she's like, Sonia, no, I saw her. Making a part 2 as we speak right now. Go check it out. Yeah. She's like, I saw her on your bed. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, she went home last night. And I kept telling her she went home last night. She's like, I saw her on your bed looking at me. And so we went upstairs. We ran upstairs. But first we woke up my mom and we kind of told her fast, like, what was happening and stuff. And we all three of us went to the door and we opened my door to my room, and we saw no one on my bed, but the blanket and everything looked as if there was someone that had been sitting there, which was really scary because my mom did the bed after she left. But it's just kind of scary. Knowing something was mimicking her to look like her or something. My sister was fully awake when she saw my aunt on my bed. But the next thing that happens is really scary because my dad was like, you're not sleeping on the floor on the mattress again. You're going to sleep in your bed tonight. So I had to sleep in my bed that night. And that was probably something that sticks with me a lot. I'll tell you in the next story. But this is the end of story 5 part 2. I just woke up from a nap. Sorry. So my dad was like, you're sleeping in that bed tonight. The same day, all in the same day, you know, my sister seeing my aunt on my bed, and then later on, me having to sleep in that bed that same night. And this is the part that is the most scariest of this story. I'm in bed, and I'm so scared. My dad's like, you're sleeping in your bed tonight, and he was making me sleep there. He's like getting mad. He's like, why are you so scared? He never believed any of this stuff, so he's like, sleep in your bed. I was like, okay. And I'm in bed and I'm like terrified. I'm so scared. And I'm alone in my room, obviously, and all of a sudden I hear just like people talking. And then my dad was like, if you're ever scared, just say a prayer. So I started saying this prayer from the Quran, because, you know, we're raised Muslim, and I started to say a prayer under my breath, and I was like, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And, I'm saying it, but I kept getting cut off by the sound coming from underneath my bed on my left side going, this thing would keep going. I would start saying the prayer, and it'd go, and I'm like, and I just stopped. I couldn't say the prayer. I couldn't finish it. And I am frozen and paralyzed in fear on my bed. And I'm looking straight up, and I'm hearing the coming from under my bed. And then my bed started to rumble. There's no washroom underneath my room, on the first floor, so there was no, nothing to do with pipes. My bed started to, do, this, and the lights started flickering, and I'm still hearing, and stuff coming from under my bed, and I'm, trying to say a prayer in my head, at least, and I'm still, these things are happening, and I yell out for my sister's name, and I'm like, come here, please. And I jumped off the bed right when she came to my door, and I jumped off, and I never slept in that. I didn't sleep in that bed the whole time we lived there. We lived there for 2 years. I don't live there anymore, but that's, I slept in my sister's room the whole time. The only time I went in my room was when I had to change my clothes for school and look in my closet, which I was even scared to do. There are more stories, but this one still sticks with me. And yeah, I can't go to bed without covering my left ear and stuff when I go to sleep because I'm so scared of hearing that thing again. It kind of messed me up. So yeah, this is the end of this story.
This story is 100% true. It is late 2003, and my friend and I, her name was AJ, my friend and I are at my house. I have a Furby. Everybody had a Furby, right? I have a Furby, and her and I are sitting at our kitchen table doing homework. And we can hear my Furby going off from my bedroom. But we're kind of like, that's weird. We're not in there. We're not playing with it, but fine. And as we continue to do homework, we're like, Is it getting louder? What is going on? We get up from my kitchen table. We walk into the hallway. My Furby is in the hallway. And I say, did you put him there? Him, her, it, whatever. Did you put it there? And she's like, no. Did you? And I say, no. I hand on the Bible. If anybody can find her, you can ask her yourself. This Furby says, get AJ. We immediately start crying. We're freaking out. We're absolutely panicked. And so we run back into the kitchen and we're just crying. We're being little girls and we're crying. So after we finally calm down a little bit, we decide that we're going to get this Furby and we're going to throw it in the garage until my mom gets home. So I said, you open the garage, I'll get the Furby. She opens the garage. I run into the hallway because in the hallway, so here's the kitchen, here's the hallway, here's the garage. So we're here. We go into the hallway. I grab the Furby. Here's the garage. She opens the door. I run down the hallway, throw it in there. She slams the door, right? My mom gets home not too long later, and we're like, oh my God, we were doing homework, and then we can hear you with the homework. And my mom's, okay, yeah, you're fine, everything's fine. Well, my mom ends up telling me later, she says, Ashley, I could hear your Furby all night long from in my bedroom. It was a small house, but it was the opposite side of the house. In our house, here was the garage, here was her bedroom. So she takes the batteries out of it. When she goes to leave for work the next day, she takes the batteries out. So like, this stupid thing is broken, takes the battery out of it, goes to work. She says when she gets home, this thing is still talking. It is still talking. She calls her boyfriend at the time and is like, come get this thing out of my house. Something is wrong with it. Something is not right. Goodbye. Get it out of here. And so we never had Furbies again after that. Mine got thrown away and my sister's got thrown away. Sorry, sister. And surprisingly enough, the only other kind of like weird thing I ever had happen to me was also with this exact same friend. Fast forward to, I want to say we're middle school. It was one of the Conjuring movies and we're in a new house now. We're in a 2-story house. My bedroom is above the garage. And where this is so long ago also that she had a little portable DVD player that was like this thick, right? And so she puts her movie in, we're watching it, and it gets to the part where this person is lifted off of the bed is like shaking, she's doing whatever it is that she's doing. My bed starts vibrating. And I looked at her and I was like, did you fart? And she was like, no, was that you? So of course we immediately jump off the bed. I have lived above the garage for years now at this point, and I know for a fact it is not the garage being opened. Also, it's the middle of the night, but at the time, my stepdad did smoke cigarettes, so it wasn't impossible that he went downstairs into the garage and opened the garage door, although he could have just walked out the front door. But you know what? We figured, well, let's just go check anyway. So we go downstairs. Obviously, he's there asleep. Also, we can hear him snoring, right? He is asleep. We go downstairs. We check anyway. Garage is closed. Lights are off. So we go back upstairs, and I don't know, I probably made her do it. Run in there. She slams her DVD player closed, and then we slept in the living room downstairs that night. And yeah, those are the only like 2 really weird, creepy things that ever happened to me, both with the exact same friend. But that Furby man, no. Furbies are a no-go for me. Not only did it say get AJ, it talked all freaking night, and then it talked again when there was no batteries in it. So
Thank you so much for watching. Those are all the videos we have for today, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!